Dude, it's really creepy. They do like ASMR on Twitch, and it's just like girls licking microphones.
Yeah, and so like weirdly enough, that I kind of get. But the ones that I
Wait, what do you get about it?
like the appeal, like
Okay,
certain
sure.
people would be into listening to an attractive girl lick a microphone or something. But like the ones I don't get are the ones that I've come across that are like ASMR. Your parents are fighting. It's 2008, and there's like you know what I mean? You're 10 feet away to the left, and there's a, you know
So
what
it's
I mean?
like someone like pretending like parents are fighting outside of a
just
door.
bizarrely, not necessarily about parents fighting, but just bizarrely specific situations in which people decide they want this audio profile and none other.
All right, this might be this might be entertaining content, but I think we're way off topic.
Oh no, yeah, we can actually do, you know.
So let's talk about stocks.
Sure.
What's up, Luke? What do you tell these people who you are? What your deal is?
Most people out there probably already know because I'm sure you've all seen my podcast.
You're like
before.
super famous.
So I've heard. Hence the reason I'm here again. Hi, my name's Luke Sweeney. I'm a editor here at Angel Publishing, mostly focused on the tech and energy sides of things, which, if you've been paying attention to the news, are pretty hot sectors.
Is tech?
Right
I feel like tech is. It's hot because it's fucking on fire. It's crashing and burning.
Exactly, yeah.
And then
hot is not always a good thing.
Energy is hot because it is
overheating.
actually like energy's been doing really well this year.
Yeah. Yes, definitely, for sure.
So let's talk about Imperial metals or rare earth elements. Are those the same thing? Is that just like a marketing like term that you guys are using to get people more excited about metals that
Now
are generally sound more boring?
I resent that assumption, but essentially yes.
Okay. What are they?
They're rare earth elements. There are quite a few of them: neodymium, ytterbium, and a few other ones that are very difficult to pronounce. If you have a periodic table handy, you can check them out for yourself. But they're produced in very low quantities across the globe, but they're incredibly valuable, especially now. It was another one of those things that that China dominates in terms of like resource control.
Yeah.
But that's given China and President Xi a little bit too much power. So the world is kind of rejecting,
China's got us by the balls, and we're trying to release their grip.
Your words, not mine, but perfectly said.
Do you know what percentage of the rare earths that they control?
Something above 60%.
Yeah.
It changes depending on what news outlet you're asking and what, they base it off of how much they're mining, which China mines a lot. Basic on how much they're refining, which China refines even more. Because all over the world you can find rare earth element deposits, but very few other places actually have the facilities and the capability to produce them in a cost-effective way, which is, that's an old story for China. That's the name of their game, essentially.
Are there any of these metals that kind of like stand out as like a legitimate investment opportunity? Because one of the things that have found with a lot of the rare earth metals is that they are often byproducts. Like this is like the case with cobalt. It's like 98% of the cobalt that's made is like a byproduct of like copper and nickel mines or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's basically like it's hard to find like a legit investment that's a pure play on a cobalt mine. And it's like these companies are more they're at the whims of the prices of copper and nickel more so than the price of cobalt, because they're only like kind of like scraping it off of they're like scraping pieces of it off. Are there any of these metals that, like you mentioned, neodymium? What was the fucking word of that one?
Neodymium.
Neodymium.
It's if of all the rare earth elements, that might be the one that the folks at home recognize because it's involved in magnets.
Okay.
The strongest permanent magnet, that's not an electromagnet right now, is neodymium based, and they're used for just about everything.
And is there a company that's around that that mines that shit, or?
There's tons of companies, tons of industries. You're right. Going back to what you said about how it's kind of like a byproduct. But that's, aside from things that are, copper and gold and stuff where they're really going for one specific, very valuable metal, just about all mining operations kind of include a little bit of what they call a byproduct, especially if they're in a
Sure.
an area that's rich in multiple different resources.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's not like you're like digging up like all of this like material and you're not going to get like something on the side.
Yeah, you're digging up a whole bunch of dirt, and then, in a lot of cases, like especially with rare earths, they're kind of hard to separate.
Yeah.
Hence the reason that China dumped tons of money into being the only one that can do this. And then, why would I pay $100 per, ounce of metal when China does it for 10? That's the usual price discrepancy between other suppliers and China. But yeah, neodymium especially is hands down the most critical of what I would consider the most critical of rare earth elements, because it's somewhat difficult to produce. The process is kind of lengthy, but it also is just in everything. These magnets are used in electric motors, which are everywhere, electric vehicles, industrial equipment, everything. And then on the reverse end, motors take electricity, turn it into motion. Turbines use magnets in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
They take motion and turn it into energy. So, renewable energy, wind turbines, hydroelectric, they all rely on, you should see the magnets in hydroelectric dams. They're probably about the size of these acoustic panels behind us, but then taken out to, huge sizes. And, so again, if you ask a local government, hey, are you interested in renewable energy? And they say yes, even if they don't know it or not, they need these rare earth elements.
So on the supply side, you're saying that most of that's currently in China. We're trying to decouple from them a little bit. What are those mines going to be in the U.S. directly, or are we more like, are we bringing it straight to our shores, or are we doing more of like a near-shoring thing where we're getting it from Canada? Because I know there's a lot of mines there. And
so that's kind of one of the interesting parts about rare earth elements, is that they're kind of everywhere. Australia has huge deposits.
Yeah.
The U.S. huge deposits, especially in Idaho, and Midwest, where there's plenty of area, flat land for digging of resources. Areas in the Middle East are looking to, I think companies in Kazakhstan are looking to potentially get some investment.
I've always been wanting to invest in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always seemed like a place that.
Yeah, especially ever since Borat.
Any companies stand out right now in the rare earth element space that you're willing to talk about, or is that something more that like you're keep it on the hush hush?
Not necessarily on the hush hush, but it's more of like an ongoing process. It's like I said, it's kind of a young industry if you're looking at players that aren't Chinese based.
Mm-hmm.
So
that makes sense.
This is something that we're incredibly active looking for in Energy Investor, is things like this. You know what? It's not Energy Investor that we're looking at. It's TAO.
Is that in TAO? Yeah, that's fine. I would figure that you would
cut that part.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But
all right, let's move on to lithium recycling. Actually, you know what? You want to talk about like human rights abuses first, because I know that like a lot of the I was doing a little bit of research on this recently, and there was something like, I think in 2021 there was like some group that is like some watchdog, and they said that there were like 700 human rights abuses in China, and then like a third of those that they found were in the mining industry.
Like per day, like
I don't know. It was
count as one human rights abuse.
Well, I also wonder about that. Like, is it just like someone filing a report? Is it someone like what? I mean, like what's the number? What's the number in the U.S.? There's probably a lot of human rights abuses here. Like,
I would say, yeah. But I guess in China, those human rights abuses don't make the news as much, and they don't translate into higher wages for the employees, essentially. Like, I guess if in America, if you catch a human rights abuse, there's going to be a whole bunch of talking about it, and then maybe that labor force will unionize, or they'll get some attention from some human rights group, and then, not that America is great with their human rights, but they certainly do a better job.
We're a little bit better, yeah. You could feel slightly better about investing in these companies.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and just to know that the transition is coming. Biden has been spending absurd amounts of money to bring businesses just like this back to America, essentially. you know.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we're obviously seeing this kind of like pretty great decoupling between East and West because we are
absolutely
kind of terrified of being codependent on China. I think kind of like the lockdowns during COVID kind of showed us how much that can just disrupt and destroy our economy. So it makes sense.
Absolutely.
I think it's a good thing that we're bringing things onshore.
Sure.
I don't know if deglobalization is necessarily a good thing long term because obviously things get less efficient when you have less global trade, but it is
definitely.
I guess it's more reliable.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think that's kind of one of the biggest clashes of ideology right now is the era of globalization that essentially built the world that as we know it. Is that something we should continue dumping money in, or is it kind of are we hitting a point where we're seeing diminishing returns essentially? And I think we've been taught a few lessons recently about putting all of your global eggs in one basket. So like in the energy market, Russia, that's the obvious, you know. Anyone that's familiar with our publications has heard me harp on this for a month now, but you know, Russia taught the world how dangerous it is to put all of your egg, like I said, all of your eggs in one basket. All of your, you know, some like Germany and all these European countries, now that Russian gas is off the table, they're scrambling. You know, they're importing huge amounts of natural gas from American producers, and you know, instead of efficiently putting it through a pipeline from a producer that's on your continent, they're liquefying it, cooling it down, and putting it on a boat and transferring it over. And
those boats look crazy too. It's like they have these like big bubbles
the big
on them.
Tanks on them. Yeah, it's an interesting, and you know, and there's only going to be more and more development in that sector because.
And you guys are looking at that right now too, right? Like a couple
absolutely.
of American LNG companies that are just
Definitely.
crushing it.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I mean, no, you know, not all of them. However, it's, you know, one of those rising tides situations.
Yeah,
but,
and that's kind of at least like a mid to long term trend, right? Like
definitely,
it's going to be around for a while because. I doubt that Europe is going to go back to Russian gas anytime soon. It's pretty like it's got to take years to mend that kind of relationship. Even if Putin like today was like, all right, the war is over, we want to be friends again. Everyone's going to be like,
For sure. Well, and we don't, you know, again, Russia's economy is not looking so hot right now, and the reason that they're still posting such, you know, good result, you know, the reason essentially the country hasn't crumbled is because Gazprom, their state-controlled gas and oil company, is essentially propping up the entire country. You know, they're selling their oil and gas reserves that Europe won't take anymore to countries like India and China and North Korea at insanely, you know, overvalued prices, which of course their actions help contribute to in the first place.
Sure.
So they wrecked the market, turned around, sold their gas at market prices that they essentially created, and now are limping along despite, you know, all the other sectors of their economy becoming sort of like a pariah.
All right, I want to go back to the anti-globalist angle that we were talking about.
Sure.
Really important stuff, really big stuff happening that's going on right now.
Definitely.
How do you feel about these Trump NFTs? Yeah or nay? Bullish or bearish on Trump NFTs?
Truly beautiful. Well, okay, so I did just, I guess like most of us, I just saw that this morning. Yeah. You know, that was kind of
I literally saw the headline. I don't know anything about it, but I thought it was funny. Mike was telling us about it like 5 minutes before we started the podcast, and I didn't realize that it was like a real. I thought it was like someone made a Trump NFT, but it was actually like he
certainly is. No, you're right.
It's like the most Trump. That is such a Trump. That is so Trump. Like to do that.
No, it's perfect. And the most hilarious part is right before that, I was watching a video that a performance artist made where he made a incredibly impressive deep fake of Morgan Freeman. I don't know if any of you guys saw that, but it was him, you know, recording himself talking, and right above him, matching his intonations and facial movements, you know, perfectly, was Morgan Freeman repeating exactly what he said. And I don't know if that just got in my head, because less than an hour later, I watched the video on the collecttrumpcards.com. If you guys saw his
and you were thinking like shit, did someone fake this? Like,
I couldn't. I genuinely couldn't. There was something about maybe his voice. Like, I guess he was reading from a script, and we all know he's not exactly the best script reader. He likes to go more off the cuff. So watching him read the script and be recorded, and there were obviously some sneaky cuts in there, I was like, is this a real thing?
Yeah.
Or is this just the funniest
As far as
social
I
media
know,
campaign?
it's real, but I don't...
No, you're right.
Yeah.
It definitely does appear to be real, or at the very least, he's backing it. But truly hilarious. $99. He's touting them like baseball cards, which of course they are not. But that's the most relatable,
Sure,
real world physical thing that he can relate to. So yes.
All right, sorry. I meant that as a side note. I thought it was so funny. Look,
I couldn't resist. I had to.
Let's get to lithium.
Yeah, sure,
we tried to get that like 10 minutes ago.
Sure.
So lithium recycling is something that you're bullish on. I guess there are some companies that are publicly traded that are doing some lithium recycling. I definitely find this pretty interesting because I know that I think it was the CEO of Piedmont Lithium who came out earlier this year. I think it was like in September. And he basically said like the world does not have enough lithium to meet the EV demand in the United States alone by like 2035.
Yeah, definitely.
And like I feel like a lot of, when we were younger, I feel like it's becoming a little bit less like this now. But when we were younger, it was like EVs were kind of proposed as like the future, and it's green energy, and they're environmentally friendly. But the amount of like environmental destruction that happens from mining lithium, and then the fact that like the more of it, the higher the demand goes, the more that we have to mine, the more land we're going to destroy. Obviously, recycling should be part of that equation if people are really kind of trying to pursue this renewable future.
Definitely.
So tell us about your thoughts on, I guess, lithium recycling, and maybe I don't know if you're willing to give any stock picks or point us in a direction where people can find those stock picks.
No, definitely. So yeah, lithium recycling for sure is something that is necessary. If the world doesn't realize that yet, then they haven't been paying attention to the numbers. But like you said, if we're purely going off of lithium as a single use, use it, wait until it dies, throw it in the landfill type thing, you're right. It's not even remotely sustainable. If anything, fossil fuels are more sustainable in that situation. But imagine if, you use that battery and it got to the end of its life cycle. In previous publications I've talked about eventually as you use a lithium battery more and more, it starts to build up these little, they call them dendrites, where the actual lithium metal within it degrades and it doesn't hold a charge even remotely as well. There's actually a way that one of the companies we've been watching at Energy Investor, they found where you can recover 95% of the lithium.
That was going to be my next question to you, is how much can you actually get? Because I would assume that you can't get 100% of it, but that actually really surprises me.
Yeah, like a crazy amount of it. And the process is kind of incredible. They take just a battery, and not necessarily like an EV battery, but any type of lithium battery. They're wrapped in plastic. They have different metals as a connector and stuff like that. They basically just throw it on a conveyor belt, shred the non-lithium components off, and then use their proprietary process to recover literally almost 100% of the important metals.
And are they recovering it by like getting rid of those dendrites? Is that the idea?
I think that's more. I don't think that. It doesn't necessarily. Again, that if I had my PhD in material science, I could probably tell you a little bit more. Deep down into the chemical structure, but I think that's more of like a physical problem rather than a chemical. I think the lithium inside it still maintains its integrity as lithium.
Are they melting it and then reforming it, or
it's the process they kind of keep under wraps a little bit, but from what I gather, they're either using like a physical or a chemical process to shred the entire battery unit itself, and then they end up with what they call black mass, which is a term in the industry where you have the unrefined, unprocessed, unrecovered, I guess, lithium metal, that ends up just as a pile of black dust, paste, something like that. And then it takes a pretty ingenious chemical process. I've looked through it back when we were, digging deep into this stuff, but it takes a lot of know-how, basically, and a lot of patents to secure the process that you're going for, basically.
And you got another clever marketing term for this one, which the lithium mining, right? Didn't you have a good one for this? You were calling it something.
That's a good question. Oh, what, infinite lithium?
Yeah,
Or is
yeah.
that, I mean, that is.
So it's not really infinite because it's 95%, but it's like
Right,
the idea
but-
is that if you can just keep reusing it,
Right.
then
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to think of something snappier, but
yeah, I didn't frame the question very well. You're good.
no, definitely, you're right though. It's definitely it's about as close to infinite lithium as we could ever hope to get. You know, the amount of lithium we've produced, used, and then thrown away at this point is staggering. You know, again, no one can tell how much lithium is sitting in a landfill.
I have like 3 or 4 cell phones at home that are just
that
are just
have
sitting
lithium
there.
batteries, sure.
And I
And that's
honestly,
like-
I never want to. There's like if you go to like Comcast or Verizon or whatever, they want you to recycle your.
Sure.
Yeah, they want your free lithium, and
Right.
I don't want to. I'm not going to put my phone in there. That someone's going to like.
If anyone wants this lithium, it's going to be me. But no, that is definitely that's a good point to consider. Is that if we had this technology ready to go back when lithium was first discovered as the battery wonder metal that it's purported as today, then we might not even the lithium shortage might be a nonsensical statement.
Do you see lithium ever being replaced or anytime soon being replaced? I see a lot of this metal is going to replace lithium. I can find those things difficult to believe sometimes because obviously the industry is very, seems very kind of set on using lithium. But is there anything that stands out in the metal space? Or is lithium the way to go?
Again, if you follow any of the any type of energy publication or, basically any tech publication on Earth, you will encounter what I like to call the new battery of the week, which is the industry's propensity to finding like a, University of North Carolina did a study. You know what I mean? These are
Sure.
grad students that potentially maybe figured out a way 20 years from now.
Yeah. Well, you saw the fusion.
Better.
Did you see the fusion breakthrough?
I saw that. Yeah,
Which,
that's
like,
good stuff.
But that's not going to be viable for years.
Right. And when Keith mentioned that to me, I was thinking how milestone might be the most misleading word in all of science, because that's what they,
they're calling it,
with lithium batteries and with, alternative energy, especially fusion. They like to say researchers achieved a once in a lifetime milestone, which, is great and all. But if you actually, to other scientists,
I've had a couple people like over the last week reach out to me and they're like, we got to do some kind of like promotional material around
on the
fusion. And I'm like, I don't think that like there's any actual investment opportunity for fusion that we can
don't let
that
Keith
we
hear
could
you
use.
say that.
Yeah. No, I think we were talking about it yesterday. I think he knows that he's well aware that there's no viable way to invest in this in anytime soon.
Yeah, I think
but
he pretty emphatically told me that as well the other day.
I think some people I guess they're like, oh well, it's an attention grabber, but it's like,
no, it definitely is, and it's definitely not nothing. Don't walk away and say that Luke told you it was nothing, because it definitely is something, but it's,
we got some time. And when it does become a real thing, it's going to change a lot.
Definitely.
And
for sure. And when is the correct word? I don't think it's an if. I feel like it's,
well, the U.S. government now is like, they have like a 10-year plan or something. Like they want to actually like create like a reactor that's going to, produce this. But then you basically need this like giant reactor, as far as I understand it, and then you have to. It's not like that. The energy has to transmit, so you're going to need a ton of superconductors to move the energy around as well. So it's going to be a massive undertaking before we are able to see anything that's remotely viable.
Yeah, and I genuinely wish them all the best. I'm not fully confident the government will be the one to pull it off, but the national labs that the U.S. has are pretty top notch, so they'll definitely be involved.
Are we going to beat China?
Ooh, I certainly hope so.
I think we will. They just copy us.
No, exactly. Yeah, the kleptocracy. That's my. That's.
I like that. That's cute.
Yeah, I heard somebody say that the other day. And
all right, what else are you guys looking at? Quantum computing. We talked about a little bit about spintronics last time, which I know you and I are kind of geeked out on that.
Yeah,
I don't want to do that again necessarily.
Yeah, no, we don't have to step back on our
We can link to a video. Sarah, where do I point?
That was my favorite from you remember those from the early YouTube days where you're just
Yeah.
like, all right, you
Yeah.
can click the next
Click
video.
the link here, yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, what's going on with quantum? So I feel like we had kind of like, when we initially were looking at quantum computing, we were approaching it from the spintronics realm, and we were looking at a couple of companies that had a lot of this specialty in spintronics.
Yeah.
And then since then, we've seen a couple of companies that went public through SPACs, like IonQ and Rigetti, and but they like got wrecked with the they initially got destroyed.
Right. Yeah. They opened the door straight to the big tech sell-off.
Yes,
that's been happening,
and they crashed. And now
no fault of their own.
I guess the question is like, are those? To me, it reminds me almost of like Intel post .com boom. Or like around like 2000 when it's like these companies got absolutely destroyed.
Yeah,
they're
right.
down like 80-90%, and you have a lot of investors who are scared and running for the hills. But
Yeah.
in reality, this technology kind of like is the future.
Definitely.
I guess IonQ, Rigetti, do those stand out to you as good purchases right now, or still high risk, obviously in some regard?
I think you'd be hard pressed to find something in the emerging tech space that isn't necessarily high risk. But no, I'd have to say in terms of the two companies and not just the field itself, definitely rock solid plays for sure. Rigetti, and again, some people might watch this and then immediately go to Yahoo Finance and look at the price movement and all that. That's not the be all end all of these companies. That with an emerging science like this, a lot of times the price movement is for other reasons. You know what I mean?
Sure, it's people hyping up the stock.
People hyping,
or it's
people selling, people that 5 years ago thought it was going to make them money before the end of the decade, and now they decided, I don't have time to wait for this. But, I mean, we could do a podcast every other day with the new discoveries that have come out of the quantum computing field.
Didn't they just like...
They did.
There's a
I don't
headline.
Even know what you're going to say,
yeah,
but
they did.
They
did
something cool.
So, but that's the thing with quantum is I keep seeing these like these milestones or these breakthroughs.
Sure.
And I'm like, is that really that meaningful? Like I saw the big one that I've seen this week was that they made a holographic wormhole, and I'm like, what the fuck is a holographic? Like you're I feel like they're hedging. Did they actually make a wormhole, or did they just like project? Did they just like do a computer simulation of a wormhole?
The second one, unfortunately. And again, that's I wrote an article about this recently about how sometimes these science writers, they just get a little excited and they
Yeah. Well, I get clicks, I get it, but
yeah, of course. And people love to read about the the future is now, man, type stuff, but
and that's one thing I'm never going to pretend like I understand is the quantum stuff.
And honestly, that's the hallmark of quantum computing. Is
right?
Was
it Alan Watts? Alan Watts said if you think you...
Richard Feynman.
With Richard Feynman, not Alan Watts. Yeah, Alan Watts.
But the father of quantum computing was just like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, and neither do I, basically.
Well, yeah, what was the quote? The quote was, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, then you don't understand quantum mechanics.
Right. Exactly.
And I think...
for sure. Because
which means no matter what, you just don't understand quantum mechanics.
No, and that means I certainly don't.
Yeah.
And again, doing my best here to relay.
Well, this is something that I've always said about investing in certain technologies is that you don't need to understand. I think a good analogy is you don't need to understand how a transistor works or a computer chip works to know that it is a good investment, as long as you know that it is necessary for the proliferation of a larger technological trend.
Definitely.
So
well said.
That's the way that I see it.
No, and that's definitely what. It's the name of the game in quantum computing. Like, we all know the potential. People have been, claiming it's going to be the new standard for a decade now. But honestly, I think it will be. Honestly. There are, we were talking about the other day, it's not the magic bullet for everything. It's not the be-all, end-all. It's not every single computer isn't going to get thrown away and replaced with the giant, orange chandeliers that people might have seen. Yeah,
well, no one's going to have a pocket quantum computer. No. This kind of pointless. You don't need it. And if we do develop quantum computers, you would eventually just have it where, they're doing the calculations and you're, connecting to it on the cloud or something, right?
Right. Well, and of course, I think there's a misconception that it's just like you hear a really common turn of phrase with quantum computing is in relations to crypto. Blockchain technology, the whole security
That
behind
it's going to crack the code.
That's the whole point of all data encryption is not to essentially make something uncrackable. It's to make something so difficult to crack that even the best computer that we have today would take something absurd like billions of years, to just brute force break through it. Quantum computers could essentially do it in minutes, and that's the big difference. Is they just, instead of ones and zeros, they have so many more variables to work with that they can just burn through so much more data, and essentially arrive at whatever hash value will crack blockchain. So that is not good for the future of finances, for sure.
Yeah, we're going to get totally screwed if China figures out how to de-encrypt before we do, right?
Definitely. Or if we figure it out and they have a fly on the wall. And but hopefully we get there first.
All right, Luke, it's good talking to you today.
Been a blast, man, as always.
Let's go bring these drinks downstairs and start the holiday.
Sounds beautiful. Happy holidays, friends.